The story begins by introducing a man riding his scooter. His name is Kirizawa. He rode his scooter around town, delivering pizzas as a part-time job. Sometimes, he met up with his friend Kei for a drink and a chat. During one of their hangouts, Kei asked Kirizawa if he planned to keep doing part-time work forever. Kirizawa looked kinda sad and said he didn't really care about living a long life. He even said he wouldn't mind if he died today. The next morning, Kirizawa got woken up by his phone ringing. It was Kei urging Kirizawa to meet with their coach. Kirizawa was still half asleep and didn't feel like it, but Kei insisted. Eventually, Kirizawa gave in and agreed. They both headed over to the house of an elderly man named Asiya. It turned out that Asiya was a boxing coach. In the past, Kirizawa and Kei used to be boxers, but they had retired. There was tension in the air because Asiya had a reputation for being strict and disciplined. Asiya mentioned that due to his age, he couldn't coach boxing anymore and was currently coaching at a high school. He expressed his desire to retire if someone could take his place. Out of the blue, Kei suggested that Kirizawa should step into the coaching roles since he was only working part-time at the moment. Kirizawa objected, but Asiya insisted firmly, even going to the extent of standing on the table, making it impossible for Kirizawa to turn down his coach's request. Kirizawa then goes to that high school called Munsu High School. Meanwhile, at the school, there's a lady principal named Makoto, and she's having a chat with a teacher named Aoi. Makoto asks Aoi to be the boxing club advisor because they're getting a new coach. Right when Kirizawa steps in, both Makoto and Kirizawa are pretty surprised because they recognize each other. Turns out they both went to Munsu High School back in the day. Makoto spills the beans that her dad must have sent Kirizawa to take over as the boxing coach, and her dad is Asiya. This unexpected reunion between Kirizawa and Makoto creates an awkward vibe for Kirizawa, and Makoto seems a bit irritated by it. Makoto mentions how Munsu High School has become this fancy place. This year, some students are aiming to get into the University of Tokyo, which is like the top university in Japan. Munsu High School focuses on academic excellence, but they couldn't say no to Asiya's request. Finally, they let Kirizawa be the boxing coach, but just for 3 months. If they don't get any new students interested in 3 months, they'll have to shut down the boxing club. So, Kirizawa heads into the boxing club room, where they've got a boxing ring and all the training gear. Soon enough, 5 students come in. 4 are part of the boxing club, and 1 is the manager. They introduce themselves and explain why they joined the boxing club. There's this one girl named Mizuno, who joined the boxing club to become stronger. That day, the students have to do their own practice because Kirizawa isn't around. One of them decides to find out more about Kirizawa, and they're pretty surprised when they find out that he used to be a pro boxer and went to Munsu High School too. The students then search for articles in the library and read about Kirizawa's history. They figure this could be a big advantage for them. While all this was going on, Kirizawa was over at Kei's gym. Kei used to be an athlete too, but had retired and was now running the gym. Kei believed that young people should get into boxing in a fun way. If they were trained too seriously and harshly, they'd probably quit right away. That evening, Kirizawa asked Kei to help him spar. It had been 20 years since Kirizawa last stepped into the boxing ring. Now he needed to get back his reflexes to train the students at Munsu High School. But during the sparring session, he felt all stiff, like something was holding him back. Suddenly, memories of a doctor telling him about his torn retina and thoughts of his wife in the hospital came rushing back. Kei had to yell at Kirizawa to snap him out of it and keep him focused. After the training, Kei gave Asiya a call and filled him in on Kirizawa's situation. It turned out that they intentionally asked Kirizawa to come back to boxing because they thought he'd lost the will to live, probably because of his past trauma. Later that night, Kirizawa had a pizza delivery work at a place where some troublemakers were hanging out on a rooftop. He politely asked them for payment, but they insisted he brought the wrong pizza. They took the pizza from him by force and told him to leave. One of them tried to kick him, but Kirisawa dodged it without thinking. They grabbed him and started kicking him until he hit the ground. Out of nowhere, Kirisawa said something like he wouldn't mind if today was the day he died, and no one would care about it. He got up and even dared them to keep hitting him. In a casual way, he told them they could also just pay for the pizza if they didn't want to rough him up. They got kind of nervous because they realized this pizza delivery guy might be a bit strange but also skilled at fighting. Eventually, they decided to pay up for the pizza. The next morning, the members of the boxing club invited the new first-year students to join. They told them their coach was a former pro athlete with lots of medals. When Kirisawa showed up at school and went into the boxing club room, he was pretty surprised to see so many new students there. The club members explained that they were first-year students and wanted to see a pro athlete in action. Unbeknownst to Kirisawa, the boxing club members had a plan to spar with him to grab the attention of the new students. At first, Kirisawa was hesitant, but they kept pushing him until he reluctantly agreed. They geared up and got ready for the sparring match. Kirisawa's opponent was a third-year student named Keito. Oe seemed worried and advised Kirisawa not to hurt Keito. Kirisawa understood and decided to avoid hurting Keito during the match. The match began, and Keito came at him right away, while Kirisawa focused on dodging and avoiding. Keito didn't seem satisfied with Kirisawa just dodging, so he yelled at him, urging him to fight seriously and get stronger. With that shout, Kirisawa suddenly got into a stance and hit Keito in the right side of his belly, making him crumple in pain. The onlookers screamed in shock. Despite the pain, Keito thanked Kirisawa for the intense fight and told others that by joining the boxing club, they could become as great as Kirisawa. However, all the first-year students watching left the room. Keito was taken to the hospital after an examination, and the doctor said he had a cracked rib, but would recover, thankfully. Oe, who went with Keito, suggested reporting the incident to the school authorities, but Keito begged them not to. He said it was his own fault, not Kirisawa's. Other club members joined in and pleaded with Oe not to report it either. Mizuno also said that if they reported it, Kirisawa might lose his job. They had waited so long for a coach willing to teach them boxing. Oe and Kirisawa were surprised to see them all pleading like that. The next day, Kirisawa came back for more training, and to his surprise, 3 first-year students wanted to join the boxing club. It turned out that Keito's determination, despite having a cracked rib, had paid off in recruiting new members. Also, Oe hadn't reported Keito's injury to the school authorities. Oe mentioned that she had never seen such dedication from club members before. With these 3 new recruits, the boxing club would stay open and keep going. However, the day after that, Kirisawa got summoned to the principal's office by Makoto, the school principal and the vice principal. They had found out about one of the club members getting hurt, even though Oe had kept it secret. It seemed like one of the teachers had questioned some students about what happened during the sparring between Kirisawa and Keito and got information from the first-year students who had seen it, revealing that Keito had a cracked rib. Makoto wasn't too happy about all this, and Keito was a talented student with plans to get into the University of Tokyo, the top university in Japan. The school definitely didn't want anything bad to happen to Keito. So, Makoto said Kirisawa would be fired and couldn't coach boxing at the school anymore. But then, Keito suddenly showed up in the room and said that the news about his injury wasn't true. He even went ahead and punched his own hurt ribs to prove he was okay. Kirisawa had to step in to stop Keito from making his injury worse. Next, Keito had a chat with Makoto and promised to study hard and get into the University of Tokyo. He begged Makoto not to fire Kirisawa, and in the end, she couldn't say no to Keito. So she allowed Kirisawa to keep coaching in the boxing club. Keito seemed to be in pain from punching his own ribs earlier, but the club members were grateful to him for saving the club. They got down to warming up for their training session. After that, they asked Kirisawa to start their training right away. It had been a few days since Kirisawa had just been watching them practice on their own. They also mentioned that they had an inter-school competition coming up in 2 months. Kirisawa was pretty surprised because he didn't know about it and thought it might be impossible to get ready for a match in such a short time. Out of the blue, Mizuno grabbed her boxing gloves and put them on, starting to practice by herself. She said she wanted to get stronger fast, and her determination showed on her face. Kirisawa paused for a moment and then told everyone to give the punching bags a shot to check out their techniques. Among the 4 students, Mizuno had the most aggressive moves, but she still needed to work on her technique. After his training session, Kirisawa swung by Kei's gym to work on his coaching plans for the students. The following morning, he got called to the principal's office once again. Turns out the vice principal had found a school rule in the handbook saying all club coaches or instructors had to be official teachers at the school. Since Kirisawa wasn't a teacher, it meant he couldn't coach at Mutsu High School anymore. Seemed like Makoto and the vice principal were actively trying to disband the boxing club by finding faults. Kirisawa asked Makoto for a private chat to figure out why she wanted to shut down the club. Makoto wondered why Kirisawa suddenly cared about boxing when he had shown no interest before and had even wanted to forget about the boxing world. Kirisawa said he at least wanted to let the club members compete against other schools because it was their dream. Makoto, though seeming uninterested, told Kirisawa to leave her office. As he was leaving, Kirisawa revealed to Aoi that he used to teach and had a teaching license. He used to teach civics. Aoi remembered that one of the teachers at Mutsu High School was going on maternity leave, and there was no replacement yet. Maybe Kirisawa could be the substitute teacher. Kirisawa hesitated, wondering if he should go to such lengths for the boxing club. But with Aoi's clever idea, she called Asiya. The next day, Asiya, Kirisawa, and Aoi met with Makoto. Makoto couldn't understand why her father had to get involved in this. They explained that Kirisawa could become the substitute teacher and keep coaching. Makoto mentioned that Mutsu High School was now one of the top 3 high schools. Asiya then brought up that the other 2 top schools each had something they excelled in, and one of them was Gyome High School, famous for its boxing club. If Mutsu High School could beat Kyumei in boxing, it could become even more popular. While they were chatting, they got a call from the faculty office telling them that the teacher Kirisawa was supposed to replace was going into labor that very day. This unexpected situation meant Kirisawa had to step in as a substitute teacher right away. Makoto reluctantly agreed to make Kirisawa the substitute teacher. So from that day on, Kirisawa officially became a teacher at Mutsu High School, teaching political economics. Now, on top of coaching boxing, Kirisawa had to teach in the classroom. Meanwhile, back at his home, Aoi and her son were watching a boxing match. It turned out that Aoi wanted to learn more about boxing to become a better mentor for Mutsu High School. Switching to Mizuno's home, she was studying when she got startled by the arrival of a man. It was Mizuno's dad, who had come home drunk. He suddenly got angry and even tried to harm her mother. Mizuno immediately got into a fighting stance, ready to protect her mother. The next morning, as Kirisawa parked his bike, he ran into Mizuno. Out of the blue, Mizuno told Kirisawa she wanted to learn how to defend herself against grown-up men. Kirisawa was a bit surprised by her request. Then the school bell rang, and Kirisawa had to head off to teach, so he had to leave Mizuno behind. After school, the boxing club members got back to their training, but Mizuno seemed kind of quiet. Later, she went up to Kirisawa and told him she wanted to spar with him, but he felt like she wasn't quite ready. Mizuno kept pushing for it, but Kirisawa kept turning her down. In the end, Mizuno said she would quit the boxing club and walked away. Aoi and one of her friends tried to stop her. Aoi asked if it had to do with the person who came to her house, referring to Mizuno's father. After Aoi learned a bit about what happened, she talked to Makoto about it. Kirisawa was also there, listening closely. According to Mizuno's background, her father wasn't her real dad. Her biological father had passed away, and her mom had married someone else and later divorced him. Strangely, even after the divorce, her stepdad kept showing up at Mizuno's home, causing harm to both her and her mom. That's why Mizuno wanted to get stronger, so she could stand up to her stepdad. Kirisawa left the room, thinking about Mizuno's tough situation. Later, when Kirisawa was in the teacher's lounge, he got a call from Kei. It turned out that Mizuno had gone to Kei's gym, asking him to teach her how to fight. Kirisawa went there too, but surprisingly, he let Mizuno train with Kei. Kei ended up teaching Mizuno a move called the body blow, a quick punch to the opponent's right side. If done right, it could cause serious pain, even radiating to the back, making it a pretty effective punch. After the training, Mizuno walked home with Kirisawa. He had learned about her situation with her dad. Kirisawa gave her his phone number in case she needed help. When they got home, Mizuno found Aoi there. Aoi had already heard the whole story from Mizuno's mom. Aoi suggested reporting the case to the police. The following day, while the club members were practicing, Aoi got a message from the club manager saying that Mizuno was secretly training at a gym. Aoi rushed to the gym, which turned out to be Kei's place. Shortly after, Kirisawa followed her and explained that Mizuno had his permission to train there. But Aoi disagreed because she was worried that Mizuno might get hurt if she had a real fight with her father. So, Kirisawa and Aoi had a chat in a back room while Mizuno continued her training with Kei. In that room, Kirisawa told Aoi that Mizuno was training not just to fight her father, but also to protect her mother. Her determination showed that she wouldn't let anyone harm her loved ones. The next day, when Kirisawa was delivering pizza, he met a boy playing alone. The boy seemed to be practicing boxing moves. Kirisawa got curious and asked where the boy learned those boxing moves. The boy explained that he often watched boxing match videos with his mother. Just then, Kirisawa got a call from Mizuno. She told him that her stepfather would be coming over shortly, and Kirisawa knew he had to do something. Mizuno's father arrived at her house and wanted to come in. Mizuno looked scared, but suddenly, Kirisawa appeared from inside the house. It was quite a surprise for Mizuno's father. Kirisawa quickly took her father outside to a certain place. They ended up at boxing club room, where Kirisawa introduced himself as Mizuno's teacher. Kirisawa also knew that Mizuno's father had come to their house with bad intentions. Mizuno's dad finally explained that his life was in a terrible state. Kirisawa replied that even though his own life was unfortunate, he took out his frustration on Mizuno and her mom. He wanted to know how bad his life really was. Out of the blue, Kirisawa invited him into the boxing ring, suggesting they share their tales of life's misfortunes, with Mizuno as the judge. At first, Mizuno's dad was puzzled about Kirisawa's intention, but eventually he got into the ring. Kirisawa said they'd compete, and the unluckier one would get punched by Mizuno. Plus, the loser had to do whatever the winner asked. The match started and Mizuno's dad began telling the story of his misfortune, how he struggled to find a job after college. Kirisawa then shared that he used to be a boxer who was almost in the Olympics, but in one match he suffered a bad eye injury that tore his retina. The doctor even said he could never box again. His dream of being an Olympic athlete was crushed because of that one punch. Kirisawa asked Mizuno to punch the person she thought was less unlucky from their stories. Mizuno chose to punch her dad, and he fell to the ground, struggling to breathe. He didn't expect his daughter's punch to be so powerful. In the second round, Mizuno's dad talked about how he was belittled by his colleagues at the bank where he worked, and he still hadn't been promoted. Kirisawa then talked about how, after he couldn't box anymore, his life felt dark. He became a teacher at a school, got married a year later, but his beloved wife got cancer and died a year after that. Kirisawa felt the loss not only in boxing, but also losing the person he loved most. Without hesitation, Mizuno punched her dad again, deciding that Kirisawa's life story was incredibly pitiful. In the third round, Kirisawa challenged him once more. Mizuno's dad shared that he had been abandoned by Mizuno's mother due to his frequent drinking. Kirisawa then recounted his own life story, how he felt like a living corpse after his wife's death, but eventually opened a yakitori restaurant that thrived for 13 years. Unfortunately, in 2020, the pandemic caused it to go bankrupt, and frustration engulfed him once again. Mizuno punched her father for the third time, and Kirisawa declared himself the winner. He told Mizuno's dad that he wasn't allowed to come to their house anymore. Kirisawa advised him not to dwell on the past and encouraged him to find a new purpose in life. When Mizuno's dad asked if Kirisawa had found his purpose, Kirisawa didn't answer but looked towards Mizuno and Aoi, indicating that he had. With Mizuno's issue resolved, she could now focus on her training in the boxing club, and Kirisawa appeared enthusiastic about coaching his students. The inter-school competition was just a month away, and one day, Keito and a club member named Tama were sparring. However, it soon turned into a brawl, with both of them more interested in fighting than using proper techniques. Kirisawa stepped in and stopped the fight, taking both of them outside. Meanwhile, Principal Makoto and the teachers were discussing the upcoming competition. It wasn't just the boxing club. Several other clubs would be competing as well. Makoto stated that if the boxing club lost in the competition, Kirisawa would be fired. Aoi seemed to disagree, but the school administration stuck to their decision. Back to Kirisawa, he was mediating between Keito and Tama, who were in a tense situation. It turned out that Tama had feelings for their club manager, Ai, and wanted to confess his love right away. Keito and Kirisawa advised Tama to focus on the upcoming match, as confessing his feelings to Ai at this moment might make the club atmosphere awkward, and they wouldn't be able to concentrate. Later, after Tama left, Keito confessed to Kirisawa that he also had feelings for Ai. Now it was Kirisawa's turn to advise Keito not to mix matters of love with boxing training for now. Keito promised to concentrate on his training and would only confess his love to Ai if he won the upcoming match. The next day, they continued their training, and the vice principal came to observe the club. Shortly after, Kei also arrived. Aoi had asked him to help train the club members in the hopes of improving their performance. The club members were excited to learn that Kei was a former national athlete who had won many matches like Kirisawa. Kei introduced a striking move called the hook knockdown, which involved 3 rapid movements: a left hook, a body blow to the abdomen, and ending with a right hook. When executed correctly, this move could be a powerful attack against opponents. They started practicing this move right away, especially Keito and Tama, who were participating in the inter-school competition in a month. Before they headed home, Kirisawa advised Keito to focus on practicing basic punches like the 1-2 punch. Keito looked a bit disappointed, but agreed with Kirisawa's suggestion. After their training session, Kirisawa ran into the same kid from the day before. The kid invited Kirisawa to play for a while, but he accidentally fell while chasing a ball. Concerned, Kirisawa took the child to the hospital, where they found it was just a sprained ankle. Kirisawa then accompanied the child back home. On the way, Aoi's younger sister, who was the child's aunt, appeared and invited Kirisawa inside. Aoi arrived shortly after and was surprised to see him at her house. Kirisawa explained what had happened, and their closeness made Aoi blush a little, considering they were both single. After a nice dinner, Kirisawa said his goodbyes. Aoi walked with him to the street and asked why Keito had been told to focus on the 1-2 punch when they had learned powerful attacking moves earlier that day from Kei. Kirisawa explained that Keito needed to work on the basics first, because he wasn't very skilled in the technical aspects of punching. Without mastering the basics, learning more complex moves wouldn't be effective. So in the days leading up to the competition, Keito concentrated on practicing the 1-2 punch with Kirisawa, while the others practiced more advanced combinations. However, a few days before the competition, Kirisawa and Aoi heard someone practicing in the clubroom. They found Keito training alone, practicing the hook knockdown move Kei had taught him, not the 1-2 punch. Kirisawa was upset because he realized Keito's basic punching skills still needed work. Despite his frustration, he decided to practice the hook knockdown move with Keito, since that was what he wanted to focus on. The day of the competition finally arrived, and they all gathered in a hall with students from other schools also getting ready. The boxing competition had 3 rounds, each lasting only 1 minute. In the spectator seats, Principal Makoto and her deputy were there, along with Asiya and Kei as spectators. When Keito's match was about to start, he walked toward the ring with Kirisawa, Aoi, and Ei. Keito stepped into the ring, and the match began. Keito and his opponent seemed evenly matched in both attacking and defending. In this competition, with just 3 rounds, every successful strike would earn points, and the one with the most points would win. During the first and second rounds, Keito stuck to using basic 1-2 punches, appearing tired from defending against his opponent's combinations. Then in the third round, Kirisawa advised Keito to use the hook knockdown move, as his opponent likely thought he could only do 1-2 punches. In the third round, Keito surprised everyone by using combinations and the hook knockdown move, catching his opponent off guard. Keito's punches landed on his opponent several times, but he ran out of energy in the final moments and was counterattacked. The bell rang, signaling the end of the third round, and the match concluded without a knockout. So, the winner would be determined by the number of points. When the results were announced, Keito's opponent was declared the winner. It turned out that despite Keito's strong performance in the third round, he had fallen behind in points during the first 2 rounds. Despite the loss, Keito had given his all and had no regrets. Then, unexpectedly, Kirisawa suggested that it was the right time for Keito to confess his feelings. Keito then shouted Ei's name in the center of the ring, surprising and confusing her. He confessed his feelings, but Ei only apologized, making the atmosphere awkward. Ei left to prepare for her next match. After Keito's match, Kirisawa sat down with him. Keito looked disappointed and even teary, but he said that he felt relieved because he had expressed his feelings. He had no more regrets and would now focus on studying to get into the University of Tokyo. In this competition, Mutsu High School had 4 matches, and unfortunately, 3 of their members had already been eliminated after losing. The only one left was Mizuno, who had won her first match and was now going to face Jiome High School, known for their strong boxing club. Mizuno prepared for her match and stepped into the ring. Her opponent from Jiome High School was renowned for being strong, but in the first round, Mizuno attacked aggressively. However, her opponent had better skills. In the second round, Mizuno started to struggle, being cornered and receiving a barrage of punches until the referee had to intervene. The referee counted to 10, but Mizuno couldn't continue, so she was declared the loser. Jiome High School won the match, and Mizuno was in tears because of her defeat. Upon returning to school, Kirisawa met with Principal Makoto, who reminded him of their agreement. Since they couldn't secure a victory, Kirisawa had to stop coaching, and he also had to resign from teaching political economics. Oa tried to persuade Principal Makoto to let Kirisawa continue coaching, but she remained firm in her decision. Kirisawa then said her farewells to the boxing club members, but they refused to accept it, feeling that it was their fault, not Kirisawa's. A new member, a first-year student named Edogawa, approached Kirisawa, expressing his desire to be trained and get stronger. Unfortunately, Kirisawa had to tell him that he couldn't coach them anymore. He left the club, clearly frustrated. It was apparent that he cared deeply about the boxing club, but felt helpless. Meanwhile, Principal Makoto instructed her deputy to find a new boxing coach and replace Kirisawa in teaching the class. She also asked her deputy to take over her teaching duties. As he left her office, the deputy headmaster, named Hajime, bumped into Aoi. Oi assured him that she would handle finding a new coach. The following day, when the boxing club gathered, Oi surprised everyone by bringing Kei along. She asked Kei to take over coaching the boxing club, starting from that day. While they were training, a student named Saijo introduced himself as a transfer student from another high school. He had transferred specifically because his previous school didn't have a boxing club. Saijo had been practicing boxing for 3 years since middle school. Kei invited him to train, and it became evident that Saijo had exceptional abilities. Kei even mentioned that Saijo could become a key player in the boxing club. However, the other club members started to feel left out because Kei was giving all his attention to training Saijo, neglecting the rest of the team. Then, one evening, Aoi came up with an idea. She purposely ordered pizza from the place where Kirisawa worked. When Kirisawa delivered the pizza to her house, Aoi shared some concerning news about Edogawa, the first-year student who had recently joined the boxing club. Edogawa had been missing for a day, and nobody knew where he was. The following day, Principal Makoto received the same worrying news about Edogawa, who had now been missing for 2 days and hadn't returned home. Edogawa's parents said that he had taken some money from their drawer before disappearing. That evening, Aoi ordered pizza once more and asked Kirisawa to deliver it, giving them another chance to discuss Edogawa's still unresolved situation. The next day, Principal Makoto faced a protest from students. They were unhappy with Hajime's teaching style, finding it boring compared to Kirisawa's engaging approach. The students requested Kirisawa to be reinstated as their teacher. Additionally, Kei, who had taken over coaching the boxing club, also expressed his concerns. He felt the club members were struggling to grasp his coaching methods and was even thinking of quitting as their coach. That evening, Kirisawa returned to Aoi's house for another pizza delivery. Aoi shared that Edogawa had now been missing for 3 days, causing both the school and his parents to grow increasingly worried. Suddenly, a message arrived from one of Edogawa's friends, revealing Edogawa's whereabouts. It turned out he was being held captive and bullied by his former middle school friends, who wouldn't let him go home. Shortly after, there was a knock on Edogawa's door. Kirisawa had come to deliver pizza once again, but this time, it was a rescue mission in disguise. Edogawa opened the door, and Kirisawa discreetly spirited him away. The bullies caught on and tried to chase them. Aoi and Makoto arrived to protect Edogawa, while Kirisawa confronted and fought the bullies. Thanks to the events of that night, Makoto summoned Kirisawa to her office. There, she explained that the students in the class had demanded his return as their teacher. She also revealed that Kei had stepped down as the boxing club coach. In addition, Makoto expressed her gratitude to Kirisawa for rescuing Edogawa. Finally, she made the decision to allow Kirisawa to resume teaching and coaching at Mutsu High School. As for Kirisawa, he had a pizza delivery to make to a customer. When the door opened, he was taken aback because the woman on the other side bore a striking resemblance to his late wife. It left him flustered, and he even dropped the change while trying to hand it over. After completing his pizza deliveries, he headed to the boxing club for training. The day's focus was on honing their basic punches. Meanwhile, Makoto was observed visiting Jiomei High School, which happened to be their rival, to take a look at their boxing club. She also had a request to discuss with Kyumi's school principal. After wrapping up his training, Kirisawa headed home. On his way, he ran into Aoi's son again, Keita. They played together until Keita got tired and dozed off at Kirisawa's place. Aoi came to collect her napping son from Kirisawa's house. While in Kirisawa's room, Aoi happened to spot a photo of Kirisawa's late wife. It had been 18 years, but Kirisawa still cherished her memory. The following day at the boxing club, Kirisawa resumed training. This time, they were working on punch range. They paired up and practiced measuring the distance for their punches, but most of them struggled to connect with their partners. Then, there was an accident when Tomobe accidentally got hit in the eye by Saijo. Saijo tried to apologize, but emotions ran high among the members, thinking Saijo had been careless. Tomobe was taken to the hospital to have his eye checked, but thankfully, the doctor confirmed there were no serious injuries, and Tomobe's eye was fine. However, the incident seemed to have shaken Tomobe's confidence. When Kirisawa trained with Saijo earlier, it was evident that Saijo was the most skilled among them, which made Tomobe feel inferior. Kirisawa shared an inspiring story about a student who wasn't initially skilled in boxing, but became a national athlete through hard work. That student turned out to be Kei. Unlike Kirisawa, who seemed like a natural, Kei was an ordinary person. However, his relentless dedication eventually brought his abilities up to par with Kirisawa's, turning him into a great athlete. After that incident at the hospital, when a nurse called for medication, Aoi approached her. However, Aoi, Kei, and Kirisawa were all taken aback when they saw the nurse. She bore a striking resemblance to Kirisawa's late wife, and the encounter left them all speechless. Once they left the hospital, they walked in silence, still captivated by the nurse's resemblance to Kirisawa's late wife. The following day, Makoto made an unexpected announcement in the teacher's lounge. She revealed that she had visited Gyo-Mei High School to request an inter-school sparring match, catching Kirisawa by surprise. Aoi protested because none of the boxing club members were informed about this, but Kirisawa appeared nonchalant and even expressed his intention to proceed with the sparring match. However, he later approached Makoto to inquire about the purpose behind her request for the match with Gyo-Mei High School. Makoto explained that sometimes students need a significant challenge to ignite their passion. While striking Kirisawa's abdomen, she emphasized the importance of taking the boxing club seriously. Upon receiving this news from Makoto, Kirisawa gathered everyone and shared the information. Most of them lacked confidence, except for Mizuno and Saijo, who were enthusiastic. Mizuno had previously lost to Kumi and was eager to avenge her defeat. Witnessing their apprehension, Kirisawa decided to invite Saijo, the most talented student in the school, to spar with him. They began their match, and Saijo unleashed all of his abilities. However, Kirisawa effortlessly dodged all of Saijo's attacks. In fact, Kirisawa deliberately asked Saijo to strike him and easily countered his moves. The match had only lasted 1 minute, but Saijo was already exhausted and couldn't stand anymore. Those who watched could only stare in amazement. Kirisawa pointed out that while Saijo had been considered the best, they must remember that he was just a high school student like them. Kirisawa stressed that with diligent practice, they could become as good as Saijo and even defeat Gyo-Mei High School. Witnessing the recent sparring and hearing Kirisawa's advice had boosted their confidence and enthusiasm. Consequently, for several days, they were occupied with focused training, preparing for the sparring match with Kumi. As a result, during those days, many teachers complained to Kirisawa because the boxing club members often slept in class due to exhaustion. When it came time to choose the 4 participants for the sparring match, Kirisawa had his own way. He would spar with all the club members, and he would select based on their performance in the fights against him. He faced 7 club members alternately, each with 1 minute of sparring time, starting with Tama. They immediately fought in the ring, but Tama struggled to launch many attacks against Kirisawa. Next was Tomobe, who often focused on defense and hesitated to attack aggressively. Then it was Mizuno's turn. She managed to land a few punches to Kirisawa's abdomen. After that, several first-year students took their turns. When Saijo's turn came, he attacked aggressively, but Kirisawa appeared capable of matching Saijo, making him exhausted. The first round concluded, and now Tama was back to spar with Kirisawa. The sparring continued, which meant that Kirisawa had been fighting with the club members for more than 20 minutes without a break. The students looked exhausted, while Kirisawa was still sweating heavily. But he continued to challenge them, whoever was still strong enough to spar with him. Suddenly, Tomobe climbed into the ring, showing that he still had the energy to fight. They began sparring again, and this time Tomobe seemed more effective in his attacks. Eventually, a punch to Kirisawa's abdomen made him collapse, and Tomobe managed to defeat Kirisawa while he was lying down and panting. Kirisawa announced that the participants in the sparring with Gyo-Mei High School would be Tama, Mizuno, Amatsu, and Tomobe. Saijo appeared shocked and frustrated. He wasn't mentioned as one of the participants, even though he believed he would be included, given his boxing skills. However, Kirisawa's decision couldn't be changed. Eventually, the match with Gyo-Mei High School arrived. Meanwhile, at the same time, Saijo seemed frustrated. On the street, he accidentally bumped into his upperclassmen, and he was immediately told to apologize. However, with his mood already sour, Saijo suddenly attacked them, leaving them sprawled on the ground. Coincidentally, a teacher passed by and witnessed Saijo assaulting his upperclassmen. As the match with Gyo-Mei High School was underway, Aoi received a call from the school informing her that Saijo had attacked his upperclassmen. The match at the school was forcibly concluded at that moment, and they returned to school immediately. Saijo and the two students were summoned before Makoto. The two students claimed that Saijo had initiated the fight, hitting them without reason. Saijo was asked to apologize, but he refused. He stated that it was all Kirisawa's fault for not allowing him to compete against Jiome High School. This incident became a serious topic in the teacher's lounge. They asked Kirisawa why Saijo wasn't allowed to participate, and Kirisawa responded that, in his opinion, Tomobi was more prepared for the match. The teachers didn't accept Kirisawa's answer because, in reality, Saijo had better boxing technique. Makoto, who was also present, finally announced that due to this incident, the boxing club would be temporarily suspended. Makoto's decision angered and upset the boxing club members. They blamed Saijo as the cause of all the chaos. However, one of the members had been proven to physically assault someone, and suspending the club was a strict school rule. They left school immediately, unable to accept this reality. As Kirisawa and Aoi were leaving, they ran into Makoto. Makoto stated that when she heard Kirisawa's response about using his feelings to decide who should participate, it reminded her of his past self, a strong-willed athlete. However, Makoto emphasized that she was now a school principal and couldn't show favoritism toward Kirisawa. In this chaotic situation, Makoto asked Kirisawa if he was confident about defeating Jiome High School next year. Kirisawa stared intently and replied that he was confident. The next day, the two students who had been beaten were seen in front of the school bullying another student. Kirisawa noticed and inquired about the incident from the previous day. Both of them still claimed that Saijo had hit them for no reason. Kirisawa continued to observe them as they persisted in bullying the student. Afterward, Kirisawa decided to visit Saijo's house. It turned out that Saijo lived in a fancy apartment in the city center. Kirisawa met his mother, but Saijo locked himself in his room, and his mother had to leave shortly for some errands. Saijo eventually came out and explained that this was the daily situation at home. His parents had separated, and his mother was rarely at home. Kirisawa tried to ask Gain about what had actually happened, including the incident involving a student who claimed not to have been beaten by Saijo. However, Saijo remained unwilling to provide any explanation. Afterward, Kirisawa met a man who turned out to be his late wife's brother. They had a conversation, and Kirisawa's brother-in-law offered to introduce him to someone who had an empty shop. He suggested whether Kirisawa would be interested in reopening a yakitori restaurant business. This offer tempted Kirisawa because before going bankrupt, his yakitori business had been quite successful. However, he also had to manage the boxing club now, and the recent incident involving Saijo required his serious attention. The next day, Kirisawa called the student who had been seen being bullied and who was also present during Saijo's fight. Kirisawa asked him to tell what had actually happened. With fear, the student finally shared the truth. He had indeed been frequently bullied by the two upperclassmen. During the incident, Saijo initially bumped into one of them. Saijo apologized, although he was in a bad mood, but Saijo saw the student being grabbed by the hair and dragged, which made him shout at the two upperclassmen. They didn't accept it and pushed Saijo until his head hit the wall hard. They started hitting Saijo, and Saijo only fought back against what they were doing, not initiating the violence. A teacher arrived and only saw Saijo hitting them. The teacher didn't know how the incident had initially started. The bullied student's story was then relayed to Makoto. Finally, Makoto decided to allow the boxing club to resume its activities as usual, and Saijo was also allowed to resume training after a brief suspension. The next day, Aoi informed all the members about the reopening of the boxing club and the real story behind why Saijo got into a fight, which was to help a student who was being bullied. They began to reflect, and some of them now forgave Saijo for his actions. However, others still couldn't accept it because they believed Saijo was at fault for the chaos. According to them, Saijo could leave the club and train in another club if he wished. Kirisawa reminded them to think clearly. Then he left. Outside, he met Saijo, who was sitting on the floor. Kirisawa suggested that Saijo should meet with all the club members to explain what had happened directly from his own mouth. Inside the club room, they discussed whether Saijo was still fit to be part of the club or not. In conclusion, if Saijo apologized for what had happened, they would be willing to forgive him. Shortly after, Saijo arrived. He acted as if nothing had happened and wanted to proceed with the next training. The other members were upset with Saijo's attitude. Finally, Saijo apologized, but it seemed insincere. His stubbornness led him to not take their feelings seriously, and he walked out of the room. In the corridor, Saijo met Kirisawa. Afterward, Saijo said that it seemed he and the other members couldn't get along. Then, he left. When Kirisawa entered the room, he asked about the incident. They explained that Saijo's behavior, which was often inconsiderate, made it difficult for them to get along. Kirisawa then stated that in this world, sometimes you meet people who are not on the same wavelength as you, but it doesn't mean they are evil. It's just hard to get along with them. Kirisawa added that if their decision was to remove Saijo, he respected that choice. They then reflected on Saijo's nature, which was often self-centered, but in reality, he was a good person. Suddenly, one by one, the club members began to run out. It turned out they were trying to catch up with Saijo to try to accept him once again. While outside, Saijo appeared angry to the point of tears, but suddenly his head started hurting, and he collapsed and fainted. Fortunately, his friends arrived just in time. They screamed for help, and Saijo was rushed to the hospital. There, they examined his head, and it turned out that the impact he had suffered had shattered his life. According to the doctor, there was swelling that couldn't be cured. When asked if Saijo could box again, the doctor replied that he couldn't. If forced, his condition would worsen, possibly even leading to death. The news was discussed in Makoto's office, as well as among the teachers. They regretted the incident that Saijo had experienced. Oi looked sad and hesitant about whether to inform the other members of the club about this. However, Kirisawa said that all the members should know Saijo's true condition. When this was conveyed to them, they could only remain silent. Although they didn't like Saijo, knowing that he would lose his boxing career made them feel sorry for him. The next day, Kirisawa prepared to train at the boxing club. In the school corridor, he met Saijo, who appeared to be perfectly fine. Not only that, Saijo had joined the drama club. He felt happy because in that club, he was surrounded by beautiful girls. Kirisawa and Aoi could only be dumbfounded to see Saijo, who didn't seem to be sad about the misfortune he had experienced. The boxing club members couldn't believe what they were seeing either. Saijo was practicing vocal exercises for his drama performance. When they started boxing training, it was evident that they were not focused. Kirisawa knew that they were probably still thinking about Saijo. They admitted that Saijo was one of the strongest members in boxing, and losing him would make it difficult to win against Kyumai next year. Kirisawa advised them to believe in their own abilities. Later that afternoon, after school, they gathered in the training room and had a discussion to help Saijo. Turning to Kirisawa, he was having a meal with his late wife's brother and another man. This man was the one who had offered him the empty shop to reopen his yakitori restaurant. Kirisawa was still torn because deep down, he wanted to reopen the restaurant, but he also couldn't abandon the students in the boxing club who still needed his guidance. That night, Kirisawa trained alone in the boxing gym, trying to relieve the stress and worries that had been bothering him. He opened up to Kei about the inner conflict he was facing regarding whether to reopen his restaurant or continue coaching. Later, secretly, Kei visited Coach Asiyan's house and shared with him the situation Kirisawa was going through. Kei suggested that they find a replacement coach for the boxing club so that Kirisawa could focus on his restaurant. However, Coach Asiya declined the idea, insisting that Kirisawa should stay as the coach. Unbeknownst to them, Makoto, who had come to visit her parents, overheard their conversation about Kirisawa. The next morning, Kirisawa approached Makoto and asked to speak with her privately. He expressed his desire to reopen the yakitori restaurant and inquired if he could quit his teaching job but still continue coaching. According to school rules, Kirisawa needed to be a teacher if he wanted to coach, Makoto explained that she couldn't bend the rules and Kirisawa would have to remain a teacher if he wanted to continue coaching. Later that evening, while Kirisawa was training at the club, he noticed Saijo watching the club members practice from outside the window. Saijo eventually left and Kirisawa followed him. Kirisawa asked Saijo about his feelings and Saijo began to open up about his struggles. He couldn't accept why he had to give up boxing, the sport he loved so much, due to his unfortunate injury. He also admitted that he didn't feel like he fit in with the drama club and still wanted to pursue boxing. Kirisawa then shared his past, where he had come close to becoming an Olympic athlete but had to quit due to a retina injury. At that time, it felt like his life had crumbled, but meeting with the student in the boxing club had given him a sense of purpose once again. Kirisawa told Saijo that he must have been very sad during that tough period. He even said it was alright for Saijo to cry, reassuring him that he would meet people who would help him get back on his feet. With that, Kirisawa shouted, letting Saijo know that he wasn't alone, while Saijo turned and walked away. Keito and Aoi witnessed this, and Keito informed the other club members that Saijo still had a strong desire to continue boxing. They wanted to find a way to support him. Later that evening after school, Keito intentionally approached Saijo, who seemed lost in thought. He invited Saijo to share a meal and have a conversation. Keito suggested that if Saijo wanted to stay in the world of boxing, they should give it their all and not get distracted by other things that didn't truly suit them. Keito emphasized that all the club members cared about Saijo's well-being. On another note, the next day, Kirisawa visited Makoto to discuss something important. Kirisawa shared his plan to reopen the restaurant while continuing to teach and coach at school. He acknowledged that it might be challenging to handle the business of both roles, but this was his dream, and he was determined not to let it go to waste. Later that evening, during their boxing practice, Saijo surprised everyone by showing up. He expressed his desire to rejoin the boxing club, not as a boxer, but as a training partner for his fellow club members. He requested Kirisawa's permission to come back, and Kirisawa agreed. So, from that day on, Saijo became Kirisawa's assistant. The once divided and chaotic club members now formed a strong and supportive team. Kirisawa and Aoi found renewed motivation in training them. In the same evening, Aoi invited Kirisawa for dinner at her home, where Kirisawa shared his plan to reopen his yakitori restaurant soon. Meanwhile, the boxing club's training became more focused and serious. Keito had even gathered data on Gyo-Mei High School's boxers to help analyze their strengths and weaknesses. While the club members were in the middle of their training, Coach Asiya made a surprise appearance. He came to check on the progress of the boxing club, which he had been a part of since Kirisawa's high school days. Makoto secretly observed the students practicing through a window. She seemed concerned and eager to see if the boxing club could truly become a dependable extracurricular activity. Their training had become more intense, and the club members started to realize something important. After every practice session, Kirisawa would rush off quickly. Aoi mentioned that Kirisawa was getting ready to open his yakitori restaurant. This started to concern the club members because they felt that Kirisawa's coaching time was divided and not fully dedicated to them. On the other hand, Kirisawa began to prepare everything for the restaurant's opening. He woke up at 4 in the morning to buy ingredients, then went to school to teach until the evening. In the evening, he continued his boxing training until late at night. On the day of the restaurant's opening, Kei, Aoi, and their families came to dine there. The restaurant had quite a few customers that day, keeping Kirisawa busy all by himself. He worked until 1 in the morning, and had to wake up again at 4 in the morning to prepare ingredients for the next day. Kirisawa's days got super busy, and he barely managed 2 to 3 hours of sleep. After a few days of this routine, during an evening training session, Kirisawa suddenly collapsed from exhaustion. The other members were really worried and asked him to focus on coaching them only. Kirisawa, however, explained that his life now was very different from his past. Back then, he had felt like giving up on life, but after getting to know each of them, his dream came alive again, and he had hope. Even though his days were tough, he had no regrets. Kirisawa apologized for looking tired earlier and promised it wouldn't happen again. Makoto secretly watched all this unfold and realized that Kirisawa was not just fighting for his own dream, but also for the dreams of the club members to win in the upcoming matches. It made her soften a bit. That night, Makoto went to her parents' house for dinner and opened up to her father. She confessed that she had been striving to become the headmaster of Mutsu High School to gain recognition and pride from him. She had always felt that her father favored Kirisawa and his boxing club over her, his own daughter. Makoto asked her father if he would be proud of her if the boxing club could beat Gyo-Mei High School. Her father told her that she was his daughter, and her growth was his pride. Hearing this, Makoto was deeply moved because it was something she had longed for, which to receive recognition directly from her father. The next morning, Makoto called Kirisawa to her office and told him that the school had decided he could quit his teaching job. They would find a replacement teacher so that Kirisawa could fully focus on coaching. This meant he would have more time to rest after running his restaurant and could concentrate on coaching in the evenings. Makoto's heart, which had been tough until last night, had softened thanks to her conversation with her father. From then on, Kirisawa dedicated his days to training the club members. They trained tirelessly for nearly a year to prepare for the match against Gyo-Mei High School. Before they knew it, the highly anticipated match was just a day away. One afternoon, a day before the match, Kirisawa gathered all the members in the boxing ring. He and each of them tested their punches one by one. After each test, Kirisawa gave advice to those who would be competing the next day. But it wasn't just the competitors. Even Saijo, who wouldn't be competing, was invited by Kirisawa to spar with him. Kirisawa told Saijo that the club members' abilities had reached this level thanks to Saijo's contribution as an assistant. Everyone there thanked Saijo for his role, and he was visibly touched. Even though he couldn't compete, he could still contribute his boxing skills to help his friends. Oe was also invited into the ring to try a few punches, and surprisingly, her punches were very powerful. Oe expressed her deep appreciation for being a part of the boxing club. Afterward, they all hugged each other and shouted their readiness to face the match tomorrow. The next day, the long-awaited match took place. Mutsu High School, in their blue uniforms, faced off against another high school in the preliminary round. After the preliminary matches, it turned out that Tama and Mizuno had advanced to the semifinals, where they faced Gyo-Mei High School. Mizuno's match began against Gyo-Mei High School, and although she gave it her all, her opponent was tough. During a break, Mizuno looked exhausted and told Kirisawa that continuing the match seemed impossible. Kirisawa simply told her that for the next 2 minutes of the next round, her opponent wouldn't be Gyo-Mei High School, it would be herself. He advised her to seize any opportunities to counterattack. The round continued and Mizuno kept on fighting. Despite being hit, she suddenly spotted an opportunity and launched a counterattack, landing multiple punches on her opponent's face. Eventually, Mizuno's opponent couldn't endure any longer, and Mizuno emerged as the winner of the match. Next up was Tama's turn to face Gyo-Mei High School, and Tama also came out victorious. In the end, Mutsu High School triumphed in the competition, with both Mizuno and Tama emerging as winners. The unwavering determination of Kirisawa and all the members of the boxing club had finally paid off. Not only that, but Kirisawa's life had taken a turn for the better. He even found the courage to start a romantic relationship with Oe, and they eventually became life partners, jointly managing the yakitori restaurant. Moral lesson from the story: never underestimate the power of pizza deliveries and yakitori dreams in shaping the future of a boxing club and finding true love in the process.